You stand on the deck of a ship, wrapped in a coat that smells faintly of oil and damp wool. The air bites at your cheeks.
Around you, languages fold over each other like waves. Italian, Yiddish, Polish, Greek, Russian. Strange voices, tired eyes, small bundles held close.
For millions, this is how America began, not with comfort, but with cold air, a trembling hope, and one terrifying question: will they let me stay?
Long before America became a polished dream sold in stories, it lived as a distant hope carried across dark oceans.
Men and women from Italy, Ireland, Poland, Germany, Russia, Greece, and so many other places stood on crowded ships for weeks, sometimes months, leaving behind poverty, war, hunger, funeral rites, and the faces of people they loved. They weren't chasing luxury, they were chasing survival. Some carried a neat suitcase, some carried only a coat and a prayer. Mothers held sleeping children close. Fathers stared silently at the sea, pretending not to be afraid. Grandmothers whispered blessings under their breath, and each person carried the same fragile thing. Maybe life will be different on the other side.
The voyage itself is a test. Steerage, the cheapest part of the ship, is cramped and noisy. Families sleep close together in narrow bunks stacked like shelves.
The saltwater smell mixes with sickness and sweat. Food is simple and often poor. Privacy doesn't exist. Seasickness is common. Fear is constant. At night, the ocean sounds endless. Some passengers stand alone on deck, staring into the blackness, wondering if they made the worst mistake of their lives. They left everything: old homes, familiar straits, family graves, childhood memories, their language, their sense of belonging. There is no guarantee they'll be accepted, no promise of success, only a possibility. For many, possibility is enough to keep moving. Then, after endless days of water and sky, a whisper starts to spread. America! People rush to the deck.
And there she is, the Statue of Liberty, distant at first, then growing larger with the rhythm of the boat. For many immigrants, this is the first moment America becomes real.
Some cry openly. Some fall silent. Some stare, unable to speak. She doesn't promise riches. She promises arrival. She means they survived the journey. She means the old life is behind them. She means a new chapter is beginning. But arrival does not equal welcome. Before stepping into the streets they imagined, they must pass through a final gate, Ellis Island. Opened in 1892, Ellis Island becomes the great doorway to America. More than 12 million people pass through it over the decades. For some, it is the beginning of freedom. For others, the place where dreams are delayed or destroyed. As the ferry approaches the island, excitement often gives way to nervous silence. You adjust your coat, fix your child's hair, check your papers again and again.
You practice a few English phrases you barely understand. Good morning. I have work. My brother is in Chicago. Simple words, but each feels like survival.
The building itself is large and intimidating. Inside, officials move quickly. Doctors watch faces carefully. Translators call instructions in many languages. Shoes echo, papers change hands. Questions come fast. For exhausted families who have barely slept, it's overwhelming.
The first challenge is medical inspection. You climb a set of stairs. Doctors stand at the top, watching people as they come up. They look for signs of illness, weakness, limping, coughing.
They check eyes, skin, posture, breathing. Sometimes a doctor takes a piece of chalk and marks clothing. A chalk mark can mean more examination, more waiting, more fear.
It's only a small symbol, but to immigrants, it can feel like a sentence. A mark could mean separation. A husband could be approved while a wife is delayed. A child could be taken to another room.
Families who survived storms at sea now face a different kind of storm, the possibility of being divided forever. Imagine standing in a giant hall, unable to understand the language around you, watching officials take your child into another room. This is the first night in America for many people. Not celebration, but uncertainty. After medical checks come legal inspections. Officials ask a fast list of questions. What's your name? Where are you from? Do you have money? Who's waiting for you? Can you work?
Have you been in prison? Are you married? Can you read? Do you have family in America? The questions are formal and frightening. One wrong answer could change everything.
Some immigrants fear speaking because of accents. Some have memorized answers on the voyage. Others simply nod too much because fear has stolen their confidence. Children watch their parents with wide eyes. Even they understand. Something important is happening. This room will decide if their family belongs or will be sent back across the ocean. Not everyone passes. Some are detained for days, some for weeks. A few are deported. To come so far, to survive the ocean, to see the skyline of New York, and then be told no, feels like being close enough to touch a dream and watching it disappear. For those turned away, the pain is almost unbearable. They return to ports they once left, carrying memories of cold air and Lady Liberty that now feel like betrayal. But for many, approval comes at last. A stamp, a nod, a door opens. Those small signs change bloodlines. With a stamp, you step off the ferry and onto the ordinary streets of New York. No music plays, no red carpet waits, just a city that hums and smells and demands work. Some have relatives with tears in their eyes, others stand with only an address written on a scrap of paper and a few coins in their pocket. But they step forward because going back is no longer an option.
The first nights in America are often crowded and raw. You might find yourself in a tiny room on the Lower East Side, in a boarding house, or with distant relatives you barely know.
Rooms are small, work is hard, English is unfamiliar, loneliness arrives quickly. Factories are loud and dangerous. Wages are low. Hours are long. Women sew in sweatshops. Men lift heavy loads at docks and construction sites. Children sometimes work too. Dreams don't arrive immediately. Sometimes they arrive slowly, shaped into survival. A full meal, a job that lasts a week, a child learning English faster than their parents, a letter sent back home reading, "We are safe." That sentence means everything. Immigration is never just an individual's story. It's family history being rewritten. It's sacrifice for people not yet born. A father works 12 hours so his daughter can go to school. A mother cleans houses so her son can become a doctor. A grandmother keeps old traditions alive, while grandchildren learn new ones. America is built not only by presidents and businessmen, but by tired hands carrying suitcases through Ellis Island. People who arrived with almost nothing, with names hard to pronounce, treated like outsiders. And yet they stayed. They built bakeries, grocery stores, tailor shops, churches, restaurants, and neighborhoods. Little Italy, Chinatown, Jewish neighborhoods, Polish streets, Greek cafes, pieces of old worlds learning how to survive inside a new one. Success brings its own pain. Many live between two identities, too foreign for America, too changed for the country they left behind. Officials mishear names and give new ones. Parents teach children English while trying not to lose the language of grandparents. They learn to answer to new names, adapt new habits, and still keep faith in old prayers. That balancing act stretches across generations. Some families still tell those stories. The suitcase kept in the attic, the ship photograph, the paper with the first American address, the recipe passed down from a grandmother who crossed the Atlantic with nothing but courage. History lives in those small objects.
Ellis Island matters because it is more than a building. It's a symbol. It holds fear, hope, rejection, and arrival. It reminds us immigration is never only about borders. It's about human beings standing at the edge of uncertainty and choosing hope anyway.
The first night in America is rarely glamorous. It's often cold, confusing, and heartbreaking. But it's real. A mother holds her child tighter because everything else feels unfamiliar. A father pretends bravery while silently counting how many days money will last.
A young girl stares out a tenement window at a city too large to understand. A teenage boy vows to work harder than anyone because failure is not an option.
These are not famous people, yet they shape the nation. History is not written only by those in power. Sometimes history begins with someone stepping off a ferry, carrying one suitcase and refusing to give up.
At Ellis Island, millions stand between two worlds. Behind them, everything they've known. Ahead of them, a country that might reject them or change them forever. For one long night, they exist in that space between fear and possibility. That is America, not certainty, but possibility.
Some become successful. Some struggle forever. Some never fully feel at home. But almost all give something to the future. Their courage becomes neighborhoods. Their sacrifice builds education. Their loneliness becomes opportunity for the next generation.
In diners, synagogues, churches, and corner shops, you can still hear echoes of those first nights. Languages blended into new accents, recipes adapted to new ingredients, songs folded into other songs. The legacy is both visible and quiet, a photograph tucked away, a suitcase in an attic, a story told at dinner.
When you think of Ellis Island, think of faces more than facts. Think of a woman clutching a child, a man wiping his brow after a long day, a grandmother humming a lullaby in a kitchen that smells of unfamiliar spices and fresh bread. Think of people teaching their children to read, of teenagers learning to take care not to lose too much of who they are while bending enough to survive. Think of the mailman delivering a single letter that changes everything because it tells a family they are alive and safe. Ellis Island teaches you something about belonging and about humanity. It shows you how fragile hope can be and how strong people are when they carry it. It reminds you that borders and documents and stairs and chalk marks are small shapes around enormous human lives.
Each name called out, each stamp given, each insistent, "I am healthy," or "I have a brother in Chicago," is part of a story that reaches deep into today.
So when you pass that place, or see a photograph of crowded stairs and stamped papers, remember this: millions stood where you stand now. They felt cold, they felt fear, they felt hope. They chose the possibility of a new life. They stepped forward. Their first night in America may not have been warm or easy, but it mattered. Their ordinary beginnings turned into extraordinary contributions. Bakers, teachers, doctors, builders, neighbors, storytellers.
Ellis Island is a doorway, yes, but more than that, it's a mirror. It reflects a simple truth. America was built by hands that were tired, by voices that trembled, by people who kept moving when every step felt like risk.
Their courage is in the recipes we cook, the words we say, the neighborhoods we walk. It's in the quiet objects people keep, the suitcase, the picture, the paper that says where they slept that first night.
And if you ever find yourself on a ferry, scanning the skyline, notice the faces around you. Their stories are older than any policy. They remind you that immigration is not a statistic. It's 1,000 small moments of bravery.
They remind you that hope, even when fragile, can be enough to change a life,
and sometimes to change a nation.